Resonance does not provide psychotherapy or medical services and is not a substitute for these services. If you have or may have a psychological or medical condition, please see a licensed professional. Hey everyone, I'm Priya Patel.
I'm Daniel Sunshine, and you're watching Everyday Resonance, where we dive deeply into ourselves to really look closely at how we can bring our best self into the world. And then when we do that, it really impacts what we attract back into our life.
Absolutely, having conversations with each other and then sometimes with amazing guests. Everything from the human experience, from work, love, sex, relationships, and everything else in between.
That's right. And we've been focusing on, for the last multiple programs, sexual resonance. And within this path of looking at sexual resonance, we've really gotten a tremendous amount of input from different people who maybe are going through different things in their relationship or just want to improve the way they show up in connection with their partner, or actually, first and foremost, connection with themselves. It seems like that's been a running theme on these conversations. First, we connect with ourselves, and that allows us to connect in with our partner. We have an awesome guest today. Her name's Adrienne Matt, and I'm really excited to bring her in. We're real excited to bring her in.
Yes, I'm very excited to bring her in. I've personally had the opportunity to work with her a few times. Adrienne started studying Tantra in 2012. And while living in London, and her studies have included red and white tantra, shibari, erotic blueprints, essential oils, and other erotic body work. She offers tantra sessions to men, women, and couples, as well as group retreats with an integrated approach to sexual healing and touch. Thank you so much for joining us today,
thank you,
Adrienne.
Happy you're here.
Glad to dive into conversation with you. There you are.
Hi.
Hi.
And where are you calling in from? Where are you zooming in from?
Right now, Austin, Texas.
Austin, great place in Texas. Excellent. I think, were we going to start today with asking Adrienne what her definition of Tantra is, just so we can get that out there?
Yeah, in these last few shows, we've had one other Tantra educator, and we never really even addressed what it even is. And so let's just go straight there. What is it?
So to me, Tantra is conscious loving. And that conscious loving can include touch, sound, presence, any version of loving that is conscious and has consciousness behind it.
So I'm guessing communication goes in that. What else would go in that?
Let's see. Communication, also I'd say connection, so physical touch and intention. I would say, I look at loving ourselves as well as bringing that love outward to bring it on into our experience, connecting with another. So what else, Adrienne? What are we missing out on? I guess we said touch, communication, energy. Any other aspects of this love that we're bringing in with Tantra?
It's presence. So it's both in person as well as remote even. So how you love, you can love from a distance. You can love, someone who's right in front of you. And, to your point, Danielle, it's also about loving yourself. So bringing consciousness to your touch, even when it's self-play and self-pleasure.
And so when you just said self-play and self-pleasure, that's the first time I heard the kind of a sexual experience coming into our definitions right now. And I find it so interesting. We're talking about Tantra, and often people think of it as some kind of real extreme alternative sexual, ritual or something to that effect.
Yeah.
But you just defined it. And I agree with this as the foundation of it as conscious loving. And within that, it seems like there's a whole range of experience outside of the actual act of what one would call a sexual experience.
Yes. So for example, something that I encourage couples to practice is harmonizing. So basically it's spooning and a way to spoon, but you're touching at least one, but ideally two chakras at the same time. So if my lover is in front of me, I might hold his head and hold his heart at the same time, and then we breathe together to create a harmonizing effect between us and connecting our chakras from the front of his chest to the back of his chest, to the front of my chest. And the same with the third eye. You could do it, throat and power center. So you're speaking your power can be spoken. And that's just as relevant in the bedroom as it is the boardroom.
Interesting.
So being able to do that type of exercise with a partner, especially before lovemaking, or even if you're not lovemaking, depending on your height, you can do it while you're standing too, just to connect in the kitchen or in the living room, or snuggling on the sofa, to just have a moment to breathe together, to have a moment to touch consciously and breathe consciously.
So
That-
in that harmonizing, Adrienne, are you taking the inhales both together and the exhales both together? Is it an opposite flow?
You can do it either way.
Okay.
So when you do it together, it's more calming. When you do it opposite, you can create a little more revving up of the engine.
I really appreciate where we're getting started with this conversation. And so I think it's a good time to ask you, Adrienne, where do you get started with the conversation with, let's say, a new client? I know you've worked with thousands of individuals in different workshops, that sort of thing. Let's say someone comes to you and they're wanting to improve their sexual connection in their relationship. And where do you get started? I think usually the first thing is assessing what their issues are. And then beyond that, what are some tools that you bring in just the first phase of that conversation?
So not every session includes touch. We often start with talking, just to get an idea of, like, to your point, where are you in your sexual journey and in your sexual healing? I don't ever want to put anyone, give them tools that they can't handle, or too far ahead of what their body and their energy can handle. So what I try to get a beat on is, where are you in your journey? And what tool might help you get to the next level of your journey? So for some, it's breath work. And 9 times out of 10, it's just breathing. It's breathing into the places that get stuck. It's breathing into the places where you can't feel. It's breathing into the places that have been hurt in the past. So often it's breathing.
And you're basically bringing into awareness what you said is, I heard stuckness, I heard woundedness. So it's bringing that to consciousness.
And I think, just to repeat, breathing into places where you feel stuck, breathing into places where you can't feel, and breathing into places where you've been hurt. Those 3 things, for people listening, if you want to practice, that sounds like a really good exercise in itself. And then can you also bring that exact exercise into your work with a partner?
Yes, absolutely. And even if your partner isn't doing the session with you, it can be, I learned something. Would you be interested in trying it? Or I learned something and I want to try it with you. Do you want to do it with me?
Those words were so powerful for me.
What's that?
I was just saying those words were so powerful. Like, where you and I met was at just a women's retreat. And a lot of us were nervous about having like a Tantra teacher come do a workshop with us. But you saying that to us was so empowering. And I can't tell you like how many of the women, it made it so comfortable for all of us to basically go back to ourselves, even, or a partner, and say, hey, I learned something. Are you interested in hearing what I've learned? Or can I show you what I've learned? And that was such a icebreaker to be able to take some of this conversation can be daunting or embarrassing or sometimes even shameful. And it just, those simple words of, I learned something, can I share it with you, was really very changing. So thank you.
Yes. And for kinetic learners and people who learn by doing stuff, you might need to show them or ask them to do it with you so they can understand what you've experienced. For those that just need to hear it, be like, oh, I got it. They heard it. They got it. Others like, well, where did you learn that? What book did you read it in? They want to see it written down so that they can read it and remember it. So just be patient with your partner in how, and keep in mind how they learn is not always how you learn. So be willing to share this with them in a way that maybe you didn't learn it, but by teaching someone else, we get it in our bones. We learn it for ourselves so much more clearly. So for people who are partnered, I often recommend learn the thing you want to learn, then teach it so that you can embody that and you can really be with that wisdom.
And so maybe let's look at one other tool. Someone comes in, you learn their history, you might work with them on this breath technique, breathing into these different places. What's another staple tool that you might bring to someone who's new to this?
Sound.
Sound. What does that sound like?
It's actually just making any vowel sound is a good start. So if people don't know what sound to make, I'm like, just pick a vowel.
Let's pick one. Do it. Let's do it.
Oh, you.
You. Oh. Priya, I don't think that was a vowel sound. That was more of a laugh. Oh, there we go. Ah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so
that feels good to do
using
that.
that sound, the sounds access different nerves as well as energy points within our bodies. So especially for people who have been having very quiet sex or very quiet orgasms because there's children in the house or they don't want their neighbors to hear or whatever that is, or they've never made sounds for themselves during self-pleasure because it was embarrassing or they were mortified by the sounds they really wanted to make. So I encourage people to make those sounds with me in a safe place, in a safe container, so that they can then practice when they go home.
So we've been looking at, this is everyday resonance. And some people might say, like, what does sex have to do with resonance?
I know, we were talking about that.
Right.
Why does it even matter? Like being sexually aware or aligned, what does that have to do with resonance?
Yeah, and Adrienne, maybe before we share, we of course there's direct relationship and because it's such a big part of our life, but Adrienne, if you'd like to share your thoughts on that, I'd love to hear that.
Well, actually, I'm going to share a bit of a story about one of the people I studied under, Charles Muir. So he was a yogi way before he applied red tantra to white tantra. So the white tantra is the tantra that most of us know about in terms of it's the type of tantra that Priya practices, which is movement and breath to move energy through your body and connect with yourself and connect with divine source. So he had been studying that for 20 some years and he was a young man. He had a lot of sexual energy and he would ask his gurus, like, what do I do with this sexual energy in my first and second, and sometimes there's their chakra. What do I do with this? And they're like, hey, yeah, don't talk about that. Like, don't go there.
Yeah.
Just stop. And what happened was that one of his gurus was sleeping around with disciples and it broke his heart. Charles's heart was broken. He's like, you've been telling me to ignore this energy. You haven't been ignoring that energy and you've been doing not so great things with it. So why are you suppressing it? It's going sideways. Like, why? And that's what launched his study into Red Tantra. How do you use that sexual energy or the energy in your first, second, and sometimes it goes into your third chakra to really express and fully express who you are as a human being? We have sex organs to use them. How we use them and how consciously we use them is totally up to us. So for me, resonance is, what is my essence? And part of my essence is as a sexual woman. How does that essence and how does that show up in my life? So I do want it to be conscious, and I do want it to be resonant with what I value, what I appreciate, and what I want to contribute to the world.
Really inspired by your words and the way that you defined it. And thanks for sharing that story about where the red and the white have melded together for you and for lots of other people now. One of the things that I was really fascinated by just being in your light was what you had called erotic blueprints, which was created by a woman named Jaya, I believe. And that was something that you shared with a group of women. And each one of us was so fascinated by this. And like the ways that I have been describing it was, it reminded me a lot of the love languages, right? So the love languages is something that a lot of people are familiar with, and it's a way to know yourself enough so that you could share with your partner how you would appreciate being loved. And these sexual types, or these blueprints as she has called them, seem very familiar in comparison to the love languages, in the essence that the way that you know yourself sexually is the way that you could communicate to your partner what your sexual needs may be. And I thought that would be something kind of interesting to dive into on air,
Sure.
as it's something that people might be inspired to learn. I don't know if you're up for going into that today.
Sure. Daniel, did you have another question?
Oh, well, no, I think let's go into these erotic blueprints and learn about that. I know that you've been trained with Jaya, the person who created them. Is that correct, Adrienne? You trained under? Yeah, awesome. So yeah, and people out there listening, watching right now, this is something that's similar to love languages, as Priya said. You can really hone in on, connect with, and see how does this relate to your experience? Which one of these do you most fit in? And so, what do you most resonate with? And then, as Priya said as well, I'm just emphasizing it, we can then communicate that outward to our partners. So let's dive into these erotic blueprints and learn about them. So Adrienne, let's get us started with what they are, and let's go from there.
So when you asked earlier how I even start a session, I'll often have my clients take an erotic blueprint quiz, which Jaya has online, and bring me those results, and then we can look at those results. And the results are broken out into percentages. So of the 5 types I'm going to mention to you, you have these percentages. You're going to lead with one usually, and leading with that one gives me information about how to talk to you about breath, what language to use with you, what tone of voice to use with you, and what kind of touch you need to be your erotic and fully sexually expressive self. So in going through the types, sensual. So the sensual type is the type that it's like you need all your senses to be ignited, but if one in particularly is ignited for you, you're just off to the races. So it can be a sense of smell or a sense of taste. You're often very much in your body. If you eat or smell something amazing, like your whole body lights up, you have a really intense body awareness, and you have an aesthetic for beauty, and beauty in the world matters to you, whether you're a male or female. Like, so even as a man, he'll be like, oh, I really felt that. So that's not something most men say, but a sensual man will say that because he really does feel it in his body, and he's very body responsive that way.
Is there a flip side to that? So if the scent is, let's say, aversive to them, does that impact them as well?
No, I mean, there's a dark and a light to each of the blueprints.
Okay.
But I want to focus on what people can connect with and identify with.
Sure.
The upside to sensual is that they can feel everything. The downside is they can feel everything. So when they feel everything and get all this information in, sometimes they're overwhelmed, or sometimes they're like, well, I don't smell the jasmine anymore. So I just lost it. I'm not turned on anymore. So it can be just one little thing is off for them.
Got it.
Just like their brain takes over, and their brain goes, and la 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 la. Just like, shut up and just let me enjoy this moment, please. Right.
Nice.
So that's kind of the downside.
Okay.
So the energetics are what we might call a little more woo-woo about their sex, but they love the tease and the anticipation and the space that's created between two people. To you, sex is kind of mysterious because it's this physical act that people do, but you have like energetic sex with people all the time. So you're like, do we have to like do it on the physical plane? Can't we just do it astrally? Like that's kind of your MO, right? You have some really epic erotic superpowers though. And your ability to be multi-orgasmic is very high, because you're in the energy of it. You're in the soup of the energy. And that's how you connect and how you get your needs met. The tricky thing is energetics often don't feel like, oh, well, you didn't honor my boundaries. So now I'm turned off. But people don't know what your boundaries are because you don't speak them.
Right.
You don't speak them. You got to speak them. But if you don't speak up, you're overriding your own boundaries, and then you build up all this resentment in your body, and your body's like, oh, don't touch me. Don't even think about it. So you sometimes hold yourself back. Like men who are energetic will sometimes hold themselves back and be like, oh, this is a little too woo-woo. It's kind of weird and I don't understand it. So they're a little scared of this really erotic like energy that they can exchange with people without touch.
And so when you say woo-woo, what are you referring to? Are you referring to in the act? There's some aspect of something coming along that's woo-woo, or I kind of missed that.
It can be. You can have an experience where you're so connected, the four walls collapse. You can have an experience of like suspended in time and space and lose all track of time.
And so actually I'm curious. So I've been, curious about this component, wondering if I was going to ask you this question, and I didn't realize this was one of the aspects of the blueprint, the energetic. So wondering if you would agree or not, I'm not sure if it's right or not, that the energetic baseline is a place where if people are practicing this tantra, this loving awareness, that anyone can actually connect. So in other words, let's say hands together, focusing on the connection between the hands, and then growing that energetically into more of a dance of lovemaking or sexuality. Would you say that only is within this category, or is that kind of a baseline universal aspect of Tantra generally?
So I'm reluctant to say yes, because for people who are sexual, it doesn't really work for them. And especially if they're like more than 50% sexual, they need you to touch their hand. They need a hard, like, let me know you're physically in, like, with me. Like, so the energy doesn't work as well for the sexuals. We all have some elements of these 5 blueprints, but especially for sexuals, it doesn't work as well.
So we've gone through 2. Could you repeat the 2? There's energetic, and what was the first one?
Sensual.
And so let's keep going.
Yeah, sensual, sexual, and then there's the sexual.
So energetic, sensual, and now sexual.
Is like you are all about the orgasm. You're all about the genitals. You're all about the act of sex. It turns you on. Thinking about it makes you turned on. You have joy and just this unashamed pleasure about sex and having sex. You enjoy getting to the orgasm. You're really easy to arouse. You go from 0 to 60 super quickly, and you're focused on the end goal all the time. Every single time you're focused on the end goal. So they're really fun to have quickies with. It's like that makes it really easy, right? So the thing is that like you crave lots of sex, but you have this you have this fear of judgment. Be like, especially for women who are sexual, it's really hard in our society to be like, yeah, I love having sex. I'd have sex 3 times a day if my partner would agree to it, blah, blah. Like most women would get shamed and shut down for that. Men are encouraged to do it. But then if you're talking to an energetic man who's like, oh, I just want to be in her presence.
Right, there's like a juxtaposition. Yeah.
Right? I just want to be in her presence. I really feel her. It's like so cute. So one of the things I do is help couples understand each other's erotic blueprints so they can connect better and in ways that serve both of them. So with the sexuals, the like I said, the dark side is shame, fear, judgment, usually of self or they've been shamed and feared by their family or peers for their strong sex drive or their desire to have sex all the time. So, but and the thing is, most people who are sexual, they're starving. They're starving for the
Interesting.
type and the style of sex that they deeply desire
Oh.
because they're ashamed of how often they need it and how they need it.
Got it.
Really sad. It's really sad.
So
There's a lot of
sensual.
that. Yeah. Maybe we should keep going since I know there's a few more, but I have tons of questions.
Me
And
too.
then the kinkies. So kinky can be the, BDSM, whips and chains type of kinky. It can also be the psychological kink. So it can be power plays. So you want to access, this person wants to access non-ordinary heights of consciousness, right? They think of the world as their playground. They derive lots of pleasure from all sorts of sensation and touch. So like pain can be exquisitely pleasurable for these people. And they can get a lot of really deep healing in kink. And because kink is more out in the open than it ever has been in my lifetime, but still there's some shame, and there's like, I can't quite say how I want it to go down because I'm going to be made wrong. So it's been taboo and hidden for so long. Like there's this fear of being found out, right? And then there's this disconnect. And it's just like, oh, I have this neurosis, like something's wrong with me. It's like, no, nothing's wrong with you. It's how you're wired. It's beautiful. Like, let's find healthy, conscious ways of expressing it so you get your needs met. So these deeper experiences of arousal can come through what other people would think of as weird, or like, oh my God, that's so painful, I can't even think about it, right? But it turns them on in ways that they have these out of body experiences, and when they explain them to me, it's just like so beautiful, and like the energetics could relate to this out of body experience that a lot of the kinkies have, and they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So that it gives the energetics a way of not judging the kink who needs it often in physical form. But for those who are more of a psychological kink, it's the domination and submissive type play. And again, there's other ways to express that other than just chains, whips and chains.
Right.
And how about the fifth?
The last is a shapeshifter. So the shapeshifter, the upside is they can do any of those really well. The downside is they don't know which one to ask for when they're in the moment, and then they never get their needs met. So their partner, who's the kink, is just like, oh my God, I finally found somebody to play with. This is awesome. And then the shapeshifter's like, yeah, I know how to handle a whip, no problem. But then their needs don't get met. So in the moment, that shapeshifter might be really sexual, and then the kink just wants to play. And you're like, seriously, when are we going to get to it? Or the shapeshifter is feeling really sensual. It's just like, will you just pet my hair, please? So the upside is the shapeshifter can do all of them. The downside is they can end up doing none of the ones that they really want.
So I have a hunch that people that come to you are having trouble embodying these to some significant degree. Is that accurate? Would you say those that come to you, maybe they're not even really able to embody the path of one of these languages as they're coming to you, and you help open them up to embracing and embodying them? Or to what degree are people embracing these when they come to you, just as a generality?
I'd say maybe 20% of the people I meet know how to access these.
So only 20%,
20%.
and that's why this is important for resonance to understand.
There's so much shame around sex. We
Yeah,
have
communication.
we've been shamed for what we desire, regardless of it's energetic, regardless of if it's kinky, regardless of if it's, I just want to be touched lightly, would you just give me some pain? Like we have a hard time seeing what we need and what we want. And so these blueprints give me a starting point for having people even pleasure themselves in a way that their blueprint tells me that they want to be like desired and played with.
Right. And then also the aspect of, like you said, is they may not see it, but then beyond the seeing, it's the communicating of it, right? To partner, to self. And I know that you had mentioned that communicating it is more than just the words. It includes body language, it includes tone. What else?
Right. So it's also the words that you use. Like, so let's say for the energetic, like they give space. You know, they have an extreme presence. There's very soft eye contact, right? Whereas if you're in front of a sensual, it's like really direct gaze, very like specific, a penetrating presence, and looking at your lips. There's no stiffness or tension about them. The sexual is often very hungry. They lean forward, but they also might feel aloof, and it's because they don't want to tell you what they really want. The dominant and submissive in kink have very different ways of being. So the dominant is you statements, and the submissive is I statements. So it's indirect, it's posed, it's pliant, whereas the dominant is can be a little more rigid. And then the shapeshifter is looking for rapport. So they're looking to match, like, what energy do I sense in front of me and how am I going to match that? So that's an example of like the different types of body language.
Wow, Adrienne. So we've come to the end of the show. This is really excellent, I think, to whet the appetite of the viewers and the listeners related to Tantra, related to these erotic blueprints. So firstly, I want to ask, just in relation to, is it Jaya? Do you know where people could go to learn more about the erotic blueprints specifically? I guess they could obviously Google that.
Yeah, I think her quiz is on eroticblueprintquiz.com.
Perfect. And how about to learn more about you?
I am at Intrepid Tantra.
Intrepid Tantra. So, and Priya, has really gained a lot from working with you. So that definitely says a lot right there. And also in this conversation, I feel like the information we're sharing, Priya and I bring the show on air to give people insight so that they can find light in the face of their own path in life, so they can live a life in alignment with their highest self, in resonance with, create the resonance that they want to bring into the world.
Not just once, but every day.
Yeah. Thank you, Adrienne, so much for being on today. Really
Appreciate your
excellent
time.
information. I've gained from it. I know that.
Mm-hmm. And so thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
thank you.
tuning in. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m., not only to the show, but to Everyday Resonance, tuning into yourself.
That's right. Thank you. Everyday Resonance was brought to you by Priya Patel and Sunshine Global Ventures.
To sponsor Everyday Resonance, please contact everydayresonance@gmail.com.